What would you do if someone offered you 2 million naira, but the price was your own child? Mama Ebube thought she could live with her choice until the nightmare began. The money was sweet at first, but the silence in her home was louder than hunger. And then the dream started.
If greed had a face in our compound, it would have been Mama Ebube's wide, powdered cheeks, always glistening with sweat and ambition. The woman's love for money was like palm oil inside white cloth. It stained every part of her life. Even her laughter sounded like someone counting coins. If the devil himself came with a deal that included small transport fare, Mama Ebube would ask for extra change before signing. Our compound in Enugu was not small, oh. 4 blocks of flats faced a central yard where everybody's business was everybody's entertainment. Children played 10-10, men drank palm wine, women gossiped while peeling melon seeds. And in the middle of it all, Mama Ebube ran her mini empire of petty hustles. She sold akara in the morning, sachet water in the afternoon, and half-cooked beans in the evening. She once tried selling umbrellas during rainy season, but when the sun came out, she simply rebranded them as shade rentals, charging children 10 naira each to stand under them for 5 minutes. Her husband had run away years ago, leaving her with their only son, Ebube. The boy was quiet, small for his age, and so soft-spoken you had to lean in to hear him. Mama Ebube loved him in her own way, but she loved the idea of never being broke more. And to her, Ebube was, well, a cute accessory in her business life. She often sent him to carry goods or deliver change, scolding him loudly if he misplaced a single kobo. The compound knew her as someone who could turn anything into a transaction. Once, when Mama Nkenchi's goat went missing, Mama Ebube offered to find it for a small fee. When a group of church members came knocking to ask for donations for new pews, she told them, "I can give you 50 naira, but you must announce my name in service and pray for my market." But greed has a way of making you look like you are chasing gold while you are actually digging your own grave. The first sign came one Saturday morning. A tall, sharp-dressing man in dark sunglasses appeared in the compound, asking for Mama Ebube. His clothes screamed Lagos money, clean white kaftan, shiny wristwatch, and the type of perfume that made you believe in heaven. People peeked from their windows. Who was this one? "Mama Ebube," he greeted, with the smooth voice of someone who sells dreams. "For a living?" "Yes, na me," she replied, standing straighter, wiping her hands on her wrapper. They went aside to talk. But in the compound, aside meant everyone listened while pretending to sweep. The man spoke in low tones, but bits of conversation floated into the air like gossip butterflies. Opportunity, travel, good life for the boy, 2 million. 2 million. Mama Ebube's eyes widened like groundnut in hot oil. The man explained something about his business partners abroad needing well-behaved children to adopt into good homes. Ebube would be sent overseas, educated, and live like a prince. "You will never lack again, madam. Your son will thank you one day." Now, any normal mother would have chased him out with a broom. But Mama Ebube's heart was not normal. It beat to the rhythm of how much. She pictured the new shop she could open, the lace wrappers she could buy, the generator that would finally make her room feel like a palace. In her mind, she wasn't selling her son. No. She was investing in his future while also investing in hers.
That night, she couldn't sleep. Every time Ebube breathed beside her on the mat, she heard the whisper of 2 million naira calling her name. She thought of the compound women who mocked her old wrapper. Wouldn't they choke when they saw her in imported ones? She imagined donating big in church just so the pastor would call her our generous sister in Christ over the microphone. But greed is like ogbono soup. It draws you in until you can't escape. By the next day, she had made up her mind. She told herself it was harmless. She told herself Ebube would be fine. She told herself lies until they felt like truth. The man returned on Tuesday with a brown envelope, heavy like small cement block. He counted the money right there, each note crisp and smelling of fresh printing. 2 million. Mama Ebube's hands shook as she stuffed it into her cupboard. Prepare him, the man said. Tomorrow night we travel. Ebube didn't understand much when his mother told him to pack his clothes. You are going to school far away, big school, with plenty food, she said, forcing a smile. The boy nodded slowly, trusting her, trusting that a mother's hand could never push a child into fire. But in our compound, walls had ears, and the ears belonged to mouths that never kept quiet. Word began to leak. A strange man, plenty money, Ebube traveling suddenly. Whispers rolled through the yard like harmattan dust. Mama Chinyere, the biggest gossip in Block C, swore she heard the man mention ritual under his breath. Others said maybe Ebube was being trafficked. Some wanted to confront Mama Ebube, but no one had proof. Yet, deep down, everyone felt that something was about to snap. The night came. A black SUV slid into the compound, its headlights cutting through the dark. The man stepped out, smiling as if he owned the world. Ebube stood by his mother, holding a small nylon bag with his clothes. As they approached the car, the driver glanced around nervously. A few neighbors peeked from behind curtains. Mama Ebube kept her chin high, clutching her son's hand. Better life, she whispered to herself. The door opened. Ebube climbed in. The man followed. The door shut. The engine roared. And just like that, they were gone, leaving behind a compound that had no idea the piece of our nights had just been sold for 2 million naira. By the next morning, the compound was humming like a beehive someone had just poked. Everywhere you turned, people were asking the same question. Where is Ebube? Even those who normally minded their business now spoke with the urgency of investigative journalists. Mama Ebube, however, moved around with an air of someone who had just been crowned queen. She wore a brand new wrapper, bright green with golden embroidery, and even changed her slippers to the kind that squeaked when she walked. Ebube has traveled, she said casually to anyone who asked. My son is going to make it big. But her explanation didn't match her glow, and the way her hands kept touching the edge of her wrapper where she had hidden a thick wad of cash made some people squint suspiciously. It was around midday when the man who brought the deal, the so-called businessman, showed up again. Only this time he wasn't wearing his Lagos kaftan. He had on a black shirt and jeans, moving with air of quiet urgency. Mama Ebube met him outside her flat. Your son don't reach the safe house. From there we prepare his papers, he said. She nodded, swallowing hard. When will I hear from him? She asked. Soon, but you must be patient. Abroad things take time. His smile was rehearsed, but there was something behind it. Something that didn't care about children or mothers or futures. Still, Mama Ebube convinced herself she was doing the right thing. But late that night, a different kind of sound filled the compound. The heavy knock of police on a wooden door. Mama Ebube! She opened the door, pretending to yawn. 2 officers stood there with torches, their shadows stretching across the yard like warning spirits. Behind them, half the compound had gathered, whispering.
We got a report about your son, one officer said. We need to ask you some questions. Her heart jumped, but she laughed. Officer, he has traveled. Big opportunity. No problem at all. The second officer narrowed his eyes. Where to? Abroad. Through which agency? She faltered. A private arrangement. The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Someone shouted, She sold the boy. Another added, Ritual people don't carry him. The first officer gestured to his partner.
"Madam, you will have to come with us to the station." For the first time since the money came, fear gripped her belly. The neighbors, who once only gossiped about her, now stared with open hostility. Mama Nkechi, who had once borrowed salt from her, spat on the ground. Mama Chinyere crossed her arms like a judge. At the station, the questions came fast. Who was the man? How did she meet him? Did she know where her son was? Mama Ebube stuck to her story. Ebube had gone for better schooling. She didn't know the details. She was just a poor mother trying to give her child a future. But the officers were not smiling. "Do you know how many children vanish like this every year? Do you know how many end up in graves?" Her stomach turned. She had never pictured Ebube in danger. In her mind, he was already in a clean room, eating bread and butter while learning big English words. But now, ugly pictures flooded her thoughts: dark rooms, strange men, and her boy's small, scared face. When they released her the next morning, the compound was waiting. This time, no one heed their words. "You will regret this thing you did," an old man said. "If anything happens to that boy, God will judge you," Mama Nkechi warned. But Mama Ebube tried to walk past them, muttering, "Mind your business." Except she couldn't mind her own anymore. The money in her cupboard didn't look crisp and promising now. It looked dirty, like it carried the fingerprints of something evil. Every note felt heavier. Every sound outside made her think the police had come back. 3 days later, her phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. "Madam, your son is fine, but there's a small issue." "Issue?" "He will need to stay with us for longer. The papers, they require extra processing, and extra processing needs extra payment. Another 1 million. 1 million? But if not, madam, I can't guarantee where he will end up. Do you understand me?" The line went dead. For the first time, she couldn't pretend this was normal. Her hands shook. Her throat went dry. She wanted to run to the police, but what would she tell them? That she traded her son like a bag of rice, and now the buyer wants more money? That night, she couldn't sleep. She sat on the floor, staring at the cupboard. The money was still there, untouched. 2 million had felt like the answer to her prayers. Now it felt like a curse. She imagined Ebube's face when he realized she wasn't coming to get him. She thought about how he had looked at her that night before stepping into the car, trust shining in his eyes like moonlight. By morning, she knew the truth she had been running from. If she didn't act, she might never see her boy again. She wrapped the money in a cloth, tied it to her waist, and stepped out into the yard. The neighbors stopped talking when they saw her. "Where are you going?" someone asked. "To bring my son back," she said quietly.
No one laughed. No one mocked. They just watched as Mama Ebube walked out of the compound, the early sun casting a long, lonely shadow behind her. She didn't know it yet, but the road ahead would not be a straight one. It would twist through fear, danger, and a truth far uglier than the greed that had started it all. If you have ever chased a shadow, you will know it looks close until you try to touch it. That was how Mama Ebube's search began. Every step forward only revealed more darkness. She started with the only clue she had, the man's face. She went to the station, gave his description, and waited while the officers nodded slowly like men listening to rain on a zinc roof. They would look into it, they said, but their eyes told her not to hold her breath. By the second day, her feet had carried her from the station to every motor parking in Nugu. She asked bus drivers if they had seen a man in dark sunglasses with a quiet boy. Some said no, some shrugged, and one pointed her to an Okada rider who claimed he had dropped them at a hotel near Ogui Road. The hotel clerk, a round man with small eyes, pretended to check his register. "Sorry, madam, we no get that name." But she could tell he was lying. Money losing his tongue, a crisp 2,000 naira note trembling from her fingers. He leaned closer. Them stay one night, left early morning. Destination,
Lagos. Lagos. The name hit her chest like a brick. A city that swallows people whole. She had never been there before. But when a mother's heart is burning, even an ocean becomes a road. She took a night bus, clutching the cloth-wrapped money at her waist. The journey was long and restless. The driver blasting high-life music, hawkers shoving gala and pure water through the window, passengers arguing about politics. Every time the bus slowed, she thought she saw Ebube's small head in the crowd, only for it to vanish again. When they arrived at Jibowe in the grey light of dawn, Lagos announced itself with noise, smell and hustle. Conductors shouted destinations, Okada horns blared, and the air was thick with the scent of fried akara and petrol. Mama Ebube stood there, her wrapper sticking to her legs, feeling like a grain of sand in the middle of the Sahara. Her first stop was a small kiosk selling phone accessories. She asked the seller if he knew where people that take children abroad might be found. The man laughed until his chewing stick fell from his mouth. "Madam, you want enter trouble oh? Those ones not get office. Now street you go see them." But Lagos has a way of revealing what you look for, if you are willing to pay. By midday, she found herself in a dim back room, behind a tailoring shop in Surulere, face to face with three men whose eyes were sharp enough to slice yam. "We fit help you," the one in the middle said, leaning back in his chair. "But help no be free." "How much?" she asked. "500,000. The number almost knocked her breath out. "Half? I only want my son." The man smiled lazily. "If you want them alive, pay. If you want them in pieces, no problem, we fit reduce the price." Her stomach twisted. She wanted to scream, but she forced herself to stay calm. "I will bring the money." For the next 2 days, she wandered the city, sleeping in a cheap lodge that smelled of damp cloth, clutching her remaining bundle of cash. She thought about the old compound yard and how the neighbors probably spoke of her like a ghost already buried. And every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ebube, his small hands, his quiet eyes. On the third day, just as she was about to meet the men again, something strange happened. She was walking along a crowded street in Mushin when she heard a familiar voice, low, soft, unmistakable. She froze, her ears straining. There it was again. "Mommy." Her head whipped around, and there, across the road, half hidden behind a fruit store, was Ebube. She ran, shoving through people, nearly toppling a woman with a basket of tomatoes. "Ebube!" she shouted. The boy's eyes widened, but before he could move, a tall woman in a headscarf grabbed his arm. "Who you they call?" the woman barked. "That's my son." Mama Ebube lunged forward, but a man stepped between them, blocking her path. His hand rested on something under his shirt, the shape of a gun. "Madam, this boy no be your pikin," he said coldly. But Ebube's lips trembled. "Mommy, please!" She screamed, drawing attention. People started gathering. The man's eyes darted around. Lagos mobs were not something you wanted on your neck. With a hiss, he yanked the boy and disappeared into the alley, the woman following like smoke. Mama Ebube pushed after them, but the crowd slowed her down. By the time she reached the alley, it was empty. Just a pile of trash and the smell of rotten food. She sank to her knees, gasping, tears burning her eyes. She had been close enough to touch him. When she returned to the lodge that night, her hands shook as she counted her money again. The men she'd met in Surulere were dangerous. But now she had proof. Ebube was still in Lagos. And if he was still in Lagos, there was hope. But hope was a slippery thing. And in Lagos, it could also be a trap. The next morning, she went to meet the men with her payment. What she didn't know was that the moment she handed over that bundle, the real truth about who had orchestrated this entire nightmare would finally crawl into the light, and it would cut her deeper than any police accusation ever could. The Surulere backroom was hotter than August afternoon in Nugu. The fan in the corner was dead. its blades caked with dust. Mama Ebube sat on a low stool, the bundle of money clutched in her lap. Across from her, the three men lounged like they owned time itself. "You bring the middle one," the one with the lazy smile asked. She nodded, her throat dry. Slowly, she placed the cloth bundle on the table. He untied it, flipped through the crisp notes, then gave a satisfied grunt. "Good. Now listen well. The person wey hold your boy no dey play. You get luck say we dey connect with them." Her hands tightened on her wrapper. "Where is Ebube?" "Patience, madam," another man said, smirking. "First, you go follow us meet someone. From there, you go see your boy." They led her outside, into the bright, unforgiving sun. They moved fast, weaving through streets thick with okadas, street hawkers, and loud bus conductors. Finally, they stopped in front of a high metal gate. One of them banged twice, then twice more. A small hatch opened, a pair of eyes glanced out before the gate creaked open. Inside was a compound unlike anything Mama Ebube had seen. Not dirty and chaotic like the streets outside, but quiet, neat, with a row of parked cars and potted plants. A tall man in a white shirt stepped out from the veranda. When he saw her, his lips stretched into a slow smile. "Mama Ebube," he said warmly, as if greeting an old friend. She blinked. Do I know you?" "Oh, you know me," he said, stepping closer. "But maybe you remember me as Chike, your husband's cousin." The name hit her like a slap. Chike, the man who borrowed money from her husband years ago and never returned it. The man who had vanished after a fight over family land. "What are you doing here?" she demanded. Chike chuckled. "What am I doing here? I could ask you the same. But the truth is simple. You brought your son to me." Her eyes narrowed. You were the one who sent that Lagos man?" "Of course." He spread his arms. "Why should I let my cousin's boy grow up poor when I can use him to settle certain debts? A friend of mine overseas pays very well for smart, quiet boys. 2 million for you, more for me. Everybody wins." Her stomach churned. "You are lying. Ebube is my son, not some package for your business." Chike's smile vanished. "Madam, don't pretend you are innocent. Oh. You took the money. You handed him over. Now you want to grow a conscience." The words stabbed deeper than she expected. He was right about one thing. She had taken the money. She had convinced herself it was for Ebube's good. But now, faced with the truth, she realized that she had been nothing more than a willing accomplice in her own child's disappearance. "Where is he?" she demanded, her voice shaking. Chike tilted his head toward the side of the compound. "Safe, for now. But if you cause trouble," he trailed off, tapping the side of his head like he was deciding whether she was worth the trouble. She stepped forward. "I want to see him." He studied her for a moment, then nodded to one of the men. "Bring the boy." Minutes later, Ebube appeared, thinner, his clothes rumpled, but his eyes still sharp. The moment he saw her, he froze. "Mommy!" She rushed forward, kneeling to grip his shoulders. "Ebube, I'm here. I'm taking you home." But Chike's voice cut in cold. "Home? You think it's that simple? You walk in, collect him, and stroll out? No. You want him, you pay again. Double." Her breath caught. I don't have that kind of money." "Then he stays," Chike said flatly. She turned to the men who had brought her. "Help me. You promised." They shrugged. "Our job was to bring you here. The rest is your problem." Panic surged through her chest. She couldn't lose him again, but what could she do? Call the police? By the time they came, Chike would vanish. Run? There were 3 men between her and the gate, and Chike's hand rested on a phone like he could summon reinforcement in seconds. Then Ebube whispered, "Mommy, the back fence." Her eyes darted to the side of the compound. A low section of wall stood there, partially hidden by potted plants. It wasn't much, but it was something. She looked back at Chike. forcing her voice to steady. "Give me 1 day. I'll get the money." He smiled, thinking he had won. "Good. Tomorrow, same time." That night, Mama Ebube didn't sleep. She hid in the lodge planning. At dawn, she bought a pair of cheap trainers, a small bag of bread and bottled water. When the sun dipped low, she made her way back to the gate, pretending to carry another payment. Inside, Chike welcomed her with open arms. "You see, money makes everything simple." But as he began counting the bundle she had filled with scraps of paper, Ebube darted toward the potted plants. She followed, heart pounding, and in 3 quick moves, they scrambled over the low wall, dropping into the alley behind. Shouts exploded behind them. Feet pounded the ground. Mama Ebube grabbed Ebube's hand and ran, dodging between stalls, pushing through crowds, ignoring the curses that followed them. The city became a blur of noise and sweat. They didn't stop until they reached the bright lights of a busy bus park. Breathless, she shoved a few crumpled notes at a conductor. "Enugu, 2 seats, now!" As the bus pulled away, Lagos shrinking behind them, Mama Ebube held her son close. She didn't know what waited for them back home. The neighbors' judgment, the police's questions, the shame. But she knew one thing. She was never letting him out of her sight again. What she didn't know was that returning home would not be the end of the story. It would be the beginning of a reckoning that would shake the entire compound. They arrived in Enugu just as the rooster in the compound behind the motor park crowed for the second time. The air was damp with early morning mist, and Mama Ebube's wrapper clung to her like a guilty conscience. Ebube was fast asleep, his head heavy on her lap, but she shook him gently. "Wake up, my son. We're home." If only it were so simple. By the time they reached the compound, word had already run faster than they could run. Neighbors were waiting, some with arms folded, some with mouths already sharp and ready to slice. Mama Nekechi was at the front, her wrapper tied high, her voice clarion over the murmur. "So she has returned," Mama Nekechi said, eyes narrowing. "And with the boy, wonder shall never end." Mama Ebube tried to walk past, but the crowd shifted, forming a half circle. Even the landlord, who normally only cared about rent, had stepped out, his white singlet tucked into his trousers like he was attending a serious meeting. "You owe this community an explanation," he said, voice firm. "Where did you take the boy, and why did police come here last week to look for you?" Mama Ebube's throat tightened. The shame burnt hotter than Lagos sun. She glanced down at Ebube, who was staring at the ground, his small hand gripping hers. She thought of lying, of spinning another story. But there are moments in life when lies no longer fit, when even your tongue refuses to carry them. She took a deep breath. I made a mistake." The murmurs grew louder. "I thought I was giving him a better life," she continued, her voice shaking. "A man offered me money, 2 million, said he would take Ebube abroad. I believed him." Gasps erupted. Someone muttered, "Jesu." Another spat on the ground. "But it was a lie," she said, tears tinging her eyes. "They kept him in Lagos. They wanted more money. I went there. I saw what could have happened to him. I brought him back. And I swear, nothing like this will ever happen again." Silence settled over the crowd for a moment, the kind that felt heavy. Then Mama Chinyare's voice cut through. So now you want us to clap for you because you rescued the child you sold?" A ripple of laughter, harsh, mocking, spread through the yard. Mama Ebube swallowed the sting. She knew this was part of her punishment. But then, from somewhere in the crowd, old Papa Ifeanyi's voice spoke. His voice was rough but steady. "This woman has done wrong, but she has also done right. She could have run away with the money and left the boy. Instead, she faced danger to bring him back." The landlord nodded slowly. "True." Mama Neketi sniffed.
So what now? We just forgive and forget? No, Papa Ifeanyi said. We forgive and remember. Remember so no other person will make the same mistake. For the first time since she stepped into the yard, Mama Ebube's chest loosened. She wasn't being absolved, but she was being allowed to stay.
The days that followed were not easy. People still whispered when she passed. Children still giggled behind her back. But slowly, she began to rebuild. She sought the lace wrapper she had bought with the cursed money and used the rest to open a small food store at the corner of the main road. Every morning, she and Ebube stood together, frying akara and selling bread to passers-by. One Sunday, weeks later, the compound gathered for a small meeting. The landlord announced that Mama Ebube had paid for 2 new street lights for the yard. She says it's for safety, he added, so no child will ever disappear into darkness again. The neighbors nodded, some grudgingly, some with genuine approval. Even Mama Nkechi gave a small reluctant smile. As the meeting ended, Ebube ran up to his mother, holding a piece of akara. "Mommy," he said, "this one is for you." She took it, biting back tears. In that moment, she knew the 2 million she had once thought was everything had cost her almost everything. But bringing Ebube home had given her far more than she could ever buy. Still, life has a way of keeping you humble. That evening, as she was closing her store, a man in a sharp suit stopped to buy bread. He smiled and said, "Madam, I have a business offer for you. Quick money." Before he could finish, she waved her hand like she was chasing away a fly. "Carry your quick money and go. I no do again." The man looked confused. She simply laughed, shaking her head. Because as the elders say, the goat that followed the hyena twice has agreed to become meat. And Mama Ebube was done being meat. This story of Mama Ebube spread far beyond the compound. People in nearby streets whispered about the woman who sold her son and fought to bring him back. Some used her name as a warning to others, some as an example of change. In church, the pastor spoke once about the dangers of loving money more than people, and a few heads turned in her direction. But Mama Ebube kept her chin up. She was learning to live with her past and to let her actions speak louder than any gossip. Ebube too began to bloom again. He laughed more, played with other children, and even started helping his mother at the store with confidence. Sometimes late at night, Mama Ebube would watch him sleeping and whisper a prayer she had learned the hard way. "Lord, let my greed never bury my blessings again." Months later, when the rainy season came, the new street lights shone through the downpour, casting warm circles of light across the yard. Children played safely under them, their laughter rising above the hiss of the rain. And somewhere in that laughter, Mama Ebube had her own redemption. Because while the 2 million had once blinded her, it was the journey to save her son that finally opened her eyes. And if you had asked her then, she would have told you with a smile, money can sweeten your mouth, but love will keep your heart beating.
If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Someone out there might need to hear it. Thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate your time and support. See you in the next story.